What has happened to Manchester City Football Club? Hi, I'm your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, back here with the Sports Vault. And I think when you look at Manchester City in the English Premier League, the way they started their season, 5 wins from 5, no goals conceded, it was as perfect could be. David Silva was just playing at a different level. Everything was working so well for Manchester City, which is why when they went into their first Champions League match against Juventus at home, I think a lot of people thought, look at all the momentum City has on their side. Juventus had struggled in Serie A, and you would think everything based off how things are going, Man City would recapture another victory. But that didn't happen, and it seems like since that time when they lost to Juventus in the Champions League, it has been a downward spiral for Manchester City. Clearly, they are no longer even in first place in the English Premier League. Manchester City with 16 points, Manchester United with 16 points, Manchester City with 15 and 2 losses. They've lost their last 2 in a row, and one of the interesting things I think you look at is collectively Manchester City has maybe the most talented group in the Premier League, but they're missing the one player, or they have been missing the one player that orchestrates it all, and I think that is David Silva. David Silva did not play in the match against Juventus, did not play in the loss against West Ham United, and did not play in the loss against the Tottenham Hotspur, which they lost 4-1. And if you have to kind of sum this whole thing down, I think you've got to ask, well, if there's that one key player who'd missed, and also Raheem Sterling did not play in the game against Juventus, but I think, again, you look at the whole way things have shaped up, how much David Silva has controlled the tempo and the pace of Manchester City. His absence has just been catastrophic in these last two, dropping these last two games. I think you just kind of see that they don't play with the same touch with the ball. They don't regain possession with the ball as well. Now, I do want to give credit to Kevin De Bruyne, because Kevin De Bruyne, it's always very difficult when you make that transfer switch and you get an exorbitant amount of money, and it's a lot of times we see that players struggle right out of the gate with that. But De Bruyne, no, he has come right out of the gate and has been very sharp, scoring goals. And I think that's the thing when you look at him at Wolfsburg. He was always a guy who was very good at setting up his teammates, giving them opportunities to score. But he's really, right now at Manchester City, been a difference maker on the offensive side. Unfortunately, right now for Manchester City, they're just not finding those victories, and a lot of goals are being conceded. Now, Joe Hart was not able to go against Tottenham Hotspur, and that was obviously a big part of it. But again, at the same time, I think a lot of their struggles in this current stretch have been tied to David Silva not being in the lineup. You look at just the way, I mean, you could just see in their opening match against West Bromwich Albion, where they won 3-0, everybody kind of said, look, this is kind of a wake-up call for us from City. A lot of people at the beginning of the season didn't really write. A lot of people either had Arsenal winning the title or they had Chelsea or something. But I think a lot of people didn't give that respect level to Manchester City. I mean, it's funny, too, because, I mean, this is a club that won the title, came in second place, and we're level with Chelsea in New Year, and then things really dropped off. But I don't know if people really respected Manchester City enough, and they certainly came out of the gate and played as well as you could. And David Silva, I think if you had to point a finger to one name, he would be the guy you give that credit to. But right now, it has definitely been a struggle, and the one good thing for Manchester City now is they get a victory in the Champions League the other day. Can that revitalize and re-energize them to start to do well again in the Premier League? Because, again, they were at perfection. They thrashed Chelsea, who won the title last year. They started the season 5 for 5, no goals conceded, and the star signings that they made had played very, very well. Raheem Sterling really was playing well. And I think that's so big because for such a young player like Raheem Sterling, who's received as much criticism as he had for the way that he handled the Liverpool exit, he's a guy like that where his confidence, I think, could be shattered early by not doing well. But he always stayed with it. Him and David Silva played off of each other extremely well, and they just looked like they had a instant connection with one another. But once David Silva was out with some tweaks to himself and he couldn't go, things just started to fall off for Manchester City. And right now they find themselves in a position where they just absolutely have to get back at it. They came out with such a great intensity. And I think people were already saying, my goodness, who looks better than Manchester City? And then in the last two Premier League matches and has not looked as good. But again, as the trouble started with the loss to Juventus in the Champions League, perhaps new hope can begin with a victory in the Champions League, which happened the other day. And one of the things that just makes it interesting is you look at just all of these signings that they've made. I mean, Nicolas Otamendi, Kevin De Bruyne, Raheem Sterling, all these top-tier players. And a lot of them haven't been on the field together for too long, which, again, is always that chemistry building thing in soccer is so important. Really, it's just once you have the talent, you put the talent on the field, and then it's up to the talented players to mesh and gel together. And that takes time. Kevin De Bruyne looks like he's stepped in right there, right away, and feels comfortable in the way Manchester City likes to play. And again, I think that's one of the things you wanted to see him be more aggressive in the Premier League, because the Premier League is a very, very physical league. They're really going to try to push you around. It's more physical than a lot of the other leagues in the world. But De Bruyne, I think, is setting and establishing himself right away as he's going to be a guy who can get the ball and he can score. And that's one thing Manchester City does need, because last year I felt like they were absolutely way too reliant on Sergio Aguero at times. A lot of times it was just get the ball to Aguero, and not enough other difference makers. But in that 5-game span, that's the most confiding thing is you look at all the people who were scoring, different players scoring for Manchester City, that depth really showed. And in these last two losses, it has been much more one-sided, with Kevin De Bruyne playing very well and scoring. But again, Man City is about ball distribution, David Silva and Raheem Sterling getting the touch, setting the tempo, which is the biggest thing I think was missing without him in the lineup. That tempo for City, I mean, you watch some of their first matches, the match against Everton, the match against West Bromwich Albion, even the match against Chelsea, the tempo Manchester City is able to control with the David Silva and the Raheem Sterling. They're two very speedy players, and they regain possession with the ball very fast, and they can set up the entire offensive attack very quickly. That tempo has been badly missed, but I think if you had to link one reason to Manchester City's struggles, it's been David Silva. But again, they win in the Champions League. That could rewrite their troubles and start anew for them. They're only behind by 1 point to Manchester United. They have a tremendous group of talent there, and we will certainly see what Manchester City does to respond.